This is Daniel Posney, and this is the Shifting Perspectives podcast. Today, I want to talk about the obligation of men going off to war. And so, this is more of an allegorical kind of conversation. It's not about the justifying or not justifying war. I don't believe in war, and that's a side issue. Welcome. This is Daniel Posney. This is the Shifting Perspectives podcast, and today I want to talk about this obligation about men going off to war and what that is as an allegory for a man's life. So let's say that there's a man that realizes that there's war coming, and he and his wife, who he loves and is in love with, has this conversation about it. And she says, God, I can't have you going off to war. I've got 3 kids and we've got a farm to take care of and all these things that are these obligations here. I need you here. And even if the war isn't right on his doorstep, there's this inner obligation to fulfill his destiny. And, the love that he has for his wife is real, and he would love to just stay there and be there with her. But something inside of him is going to be churning his blood. And this is something that some men go through, that they're trying to tap into that mojo, that spirit, that blood inside of them that stirs when something like this happens. Instead of just pulling back and saying, yeah, you're right, I'll stay here. Because if he does stay there, there's going to be something that's churning inside the woman that says, I want him to stay, but I need him to fulfill his destiny. I need him to accept his robe and crown. I need him to be king, but in order for him to be king, he has to fight his way through, kind of thing. So even if it means his possible death, I need to support him in this. Like there's this Cherokee proverb that goes, a woman's purpose is to guide man back to his soul, so as to reunite him with his source. And that's kind of what's being played out here, is that even though it might be easier for him to stay home and be in love with his wife and take care of those things at the house, there's this destiny that a man needs to fulfill. And I know that I needed to tap into those things myself, because on the one side of myself, I want that nurturing, the tenderness, the peace, that stillness in my life. And yet there's this fire inside of me that kind of debates, and it says, well, war is wrong, and war is anger, and war is aggression, and you don't need that in your life. And yet there's something inside of me that has resisted that part of me. And so I've needed to go on a 2,000-mile bicycle ride by myself down the Pacific coast and camp out along the way for 30 days. I've needed to take a 3,000-mile motorcycle trip around different states and camp out in March. I've needed to go to a cave with just water for 3 days out in the desert. And that's why men and women, but I'm talking about men here, that's why they need to go and challenge themselves and go off and do these motorcycle rides or whatever, sail around the world. And there's a movie called Long Way Round with Ewan McGregor and his friend Charlie, and they go off on this world trip on their motorcycles. And it is kind of like that, where you kind of feel like you get softened a little bit too much by the world, and the world makes you squeamish about putting yourself on the line, or making you feel that it's important, that the most important thing in your life is your cell phone. So a lot of guys don't really know what that feels like. And that's actually what I'm going to be doing a little bit in the men's retreat coming up October 10th through the 15th. It's just kind of tapping into that parts of ourselves, not in an overly aggressive way, but just being here with ourselves, in our own feelings and determination, and going on hikes and doing things. There's not going to be any, screaming cold baths and things like that, but it's really going to be about us finding ourselves again. And sometimes when we pull ourselves out of the stream of the world, we get to find ourselves. We go off into a camping trip, or go on a canoe trip, or a bicycle ride, or whatever, and we get to find ourselves again, and we're not so locked into the loop of anxiety and fear and worry and all the stuff that our overwhelming life can put upon us. So that's what I want to just kind of tap into, is that, if there's a feeling of you that you would not go off to war because you need to stay home with your wife and kids and farm and whatever else you got going on, that there is something that as a man we sometimes need to fulfill. And if there's any fear about, what could happen to you, that you might die, we're all going to die. We're all leading towards our own death. But then again, we know we don't die. Our physical body dies, but we don't die. So there's all those deep questions that get played out. And what is it about your life that needs to play out here, out of your own safety zone, out of your own comfort zone? So that's just something that's been kind of rolling around in my head, and I'm sure will be played out in the men's retreat. So I thought I'd bring it up here. Thank you.